Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Personal Injury Perspective. And we're very lucky today to have noted personal injury trial attorney Bryan Roberts of the law firm of Stark & Stark. Bryan is a certified civil trial attorney, which means he's in the trenches fighting the good fight, helping injured people. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. Good to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a personal injury lawyer?
Sure. So my journey to the field of personal injury law was a little unconventional. When I was in college, I obtained a commercial driver's license and drove a truck. And I carried on that experience through law school. And 23 years later, I still maintain my commercial driver's license. And now I represent the victims of fatal and catastrophic truck crashes.
I see when I look at your name something certified civil trial attorney. What is that, and is that an important distinction?
Sure, it's something that I'm very proud of. The Supreme Court of New Jersey offers certifications in certain practice areas, and it's a very difficult and rigorous process to get certification. It begins with trying cases, having good relationships with judges and adversaries, getting good results, doing continuing legal education, and then eventually taking an exam. And it's a very difficult test, and those who pass are then considered to be certified, and I'm certified as a civil trial attorney.
And how many of the hundreds of thousands of attorneys in New Jersey, what percentage of them are certified civil trial attorneys?
I think the statistic that I saw was about 2%. And when you're selecting an attorney in a personal injury case, you want to make sure that there's someone that can advocate for you in the courtroom, and certainly a civil certified trial attorney is someone who's capable of doing that.
What inspired you to go into personal injury law as opposed to like corporate law or something like that?
Well, I started my career on the defense side. I was part of a national defense team for a Fortune 50 motor carrier, and I was one of their rapid responders. That was a group of people that showed up to crash scenes soon after they happened. After doing that work for a number of years, I really wanted to start helping the victims of these crashes, which is why I made this switch to helping the families that have been harmed by these terrible crashes.
Yeah, and I guess along those lines, what do you find most fulfilling about doing this type of work?
Really restoring the clients to where they were before best as possible, helping their families, ensuring that their future is going to be secure for them, and trying to make our roads safer.
Bryan, one of the things that you mentioned is that you actually drove a truck, and you did this through college and law school. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What made you want to drive a truck to start with?
Well, I'll be quite honest with you, Rob. It was the highest paying summer job I could get while I was in college. And that's sort of what motivated me to get my commercial driver's license. And I really enjoyed it. It was hard work. It was difficult work. It was work that you had to be extraordinarily careful doing because of the consequences if something went wrong.
What did you learn from doing it? And is there anything that you could share with us about it?
Sure. The first thing I learned is it's really hard work, and it's difficult to drive a truck. You know, all of us have had experiences being passengers in cars and driving cars, but you don't fully appreciate how big these trucks are, how difficult they are to operate, and how difficult the job of a delivery driver is until you step into their shoes.
And did you actually drive these big rigs?
So I've got a B-class CDL. I drove straight box trucks, and I delivered ice. I had an opportunity when I had my permit to drive Class A tractor trailers, and enjoyed that time, but primarily I drove a straight box truck.
Okay. And this was, I'm sure, before the time of backup cameras, side view cameras, and the like, all fabulous safety devices, correct?
They are, and certainly I wish that the trucks that I drove were equipped with those things. I think that all trucks on the road, especially ones that are 80,000 pounds and above, should be equipped with those safety devices.
So how do you transition then from driving a truck, I guess initially as a summer job, to going to law school and to actually getting involved in the trucking industry as an attorney?
So I had a friend in law school that knew about my background, having a CDL and driving trucks, and he was at a firm that represented a Fortune 50 motor carrier, and that company was very interested in having lawyers that could walk the walk and talk the talk and knew what their drivers went through on a daily basis. And so knowing I had that background, he gave me an opportunity to work for them, and the rest was history.
And so you began working for this trucking company. I guess initially you were on the side of the trucking company, correct?
That's right. I defended cases across the United States where this company was involved in fatal or catastrophic crashes.
And you had mentioned, I think, something about a rapid response team. What is that?
Right. So what you find is these large trucking companies have a team of folks, lawyers, experts, investigators, that immediately respond to fatal and catastrophic crashes for a number of reasons. One, so that they can control the evidence in the case, and two, so that they can immediately investigate what exactly happened.
So if there was a bad crash, let's say someplace in Nevada involving this company's truck, they would fly you and other members of the team out to the site, and within how much time would that occur?
I was typically at a crash scene within 24 hours of it occurring. And they would fly, like I said, myself as the lawyer who would head the investigation, along with experts in a variety of fields, accident reconstructionists, things of this nature.
So what made you change from being on the side of the corporate interests to representing individuals, to people who are harmed by corporations?
You know, after doing this work for a number of years, I really enjoyed the time that I spent with drivers, but I really struggled with the fact that I felt like I wasn't helping the victims of these crashes. And I wanted to make a change so that I could help the victims of these terrible crashes and in hopes make our roads a little bit safer.
And so that motivates you to switch sides and to become a plaintiff's, I guess it's considered a plaintiff's personal injury attorney. And on average, how many of these trucking cases do you handle a year?
You know, the vast majority of my practice involves commercial motor vehicles. So by definition, any vehicle that's 10,001 pounds or greater is a commercial motor vehicle. And it can be anything from a heavy-duty pickup truck to a box truck to a tractor trailer, a tanker trailer, a school bus. But I primarily concentrate my practice in crashes involving those types of vehicles.
Can you tell our listeners and viewers why it's important to have an attorney like you who actually walked the walk and talked the talk, drove the trucks, worked for the other side, and is now representing victims who have been harmed in these tractor trailer and box truck and other larger truck collisions? Why is it important that someone who gets harmed in these type of crashes chooses you, Bryan Roberts, as opposed to any other personal injury attorney?
It's a really good question, and one that I'm asked quite frequently, and there are a number of reasons. One, different from a private passenger vehicle, there are very specific rules and laws and regulations that apply just to commercial motor vehicles, both from state governments, federal governments. It's really important to know those rules, laws, and regulations. It's also really important to know what a driver is doing in a crash and the technology and instrumentation that he or she's using. And for someone who's been behind the wheel, I have an intimate understanding of those things.
And so, you know, you've explained to our listeners and viewers that you are a certified civil trial attorney, which is really about 2 to 3% of the attorneys in New Jersey. But don't you also hold a particular board certification in trucking, particular to trucking?
I do. So one thing that I'm very proud of is I'm certified by the National Board of Trial Advocates as a truck accident lawyer. And this certification, I believe there are approximately 60 of us.
60 in the whole country.
Throughout the United States that hold this certification. In order to get it, you have to demonstrate specialized knowledge in the truck accident field. And what that means is you have to litigate truck accident cases, you have to be a thought leader in that area, you have to lecture, you have to have recommendations from experts that you work with, judges, adversaries, and then you have to take a test. And it's a pretty extensive test that goes on for about a day. And if you pass all the criteria in the test, then you become board certified.
So this is really special. This is not something that you pay, a particular price to and they award you this plaque saying that you're a certified truck accident attorney. You really have to work for it, and you really have to live the life to get this distinction.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so proud of it. This is not something that, like you said, Rob, you can write a check and receive a diploma on your wall for. This is something that you've got to demonstrate specialized knowledge, and you have to pass a very rigorous test.
Bryan, can you share with our listeners and viewers a particularly memorable case that you've been involved in?
Sure. All of my cases are memorable because I care deeply about my clients and the relationships that we form together throughout the litigation process. But the cases for me that are most fulfilling are ones where companies make changes that make our roads safer. For example, in one particular case, a commercial motor vehicle fleet was very poorly maintained, and as a result of that, there was a brake failure that caused a catastrophic crash and terribly injured my client. Throughout the case, we attempted to get that company to change the way they did business, to ensure that their vehicles were properly maintained so that what happened to my client would not happen to anyone else. At the conclusion of the case, we got full monetary justice for our client, but most importantly, we had the company agree to make changes to ensure that their fleet would be properly maintained so that this type of thing would not happen again.
So not only did you get the client compensated completely, but you were able to effect a change that would make the roads safer because you're making a fleet of commercial vehicles much safer, correct?
That's right. One thing I say all the time is I would like nothing more than to be put out of business because companies are doing the right thing. They're training their drivers, they're maintaining their vehicles, and they're trying to make the roads as safe as they possibly can be.
Okay. Are there any misconceptions that you deal with on a regular basis about personal injury attorneys that the public has per se?
I think that one thing that the public probably doesn't understand is that we are sort of the last line of defense between corporate interest and public safety. What we do is, yes, try to get folks the money they need in order to carry on their lives, but most importantly, we try to make the world safer. And we take on these battles where it's one individual or one family against a multinational billion-dollar company. If they change the way they do business, make the world a little bit safer, and restore our clients as close as possible to where they were before this terrible thing happened to them.
Okay. So, Bryan, I read about a case that you had tried. I'm not sure exactly when the trial took place, but it was interesting because the gentleman had what most people describe as soft tissue injuries, a herniated disc in his spine, and you got an incredible verdict, I think close to $2 million. Can you tell us a little bit about that case, the injury, and what you did to get this type of verdict?
Sure. So it was a case that was venued in Somerset County, New Jersey, and it was one that unfortunately the insurance company really never took seriously until the jury spoke. It involved a young man who had a very young family who sustained an injury to his spine, and although some people would categorize that as a soft tissue injury, for him and his family, he sustained permanent spinal damage in that crash, and it affected every aspect of his life. We were similarly aged at the time the case was tried, and I spent a lot of time with him and his family at his house just to see how this permanent spinal damage affected him and his ability to do his work, his chores around the house, and interact with his wife and children. One thing that I think was so poignant about that case was a story that he shared with me that I shared with the jury in my closing, which was that he was coaching his daughter's softball team, and as a young 30-year-old, he went to crouch down to catch her to warm her up to go into pitch. And he saw sort of across the field a much older gentleman, probably twice his age, doing the same thing with his daughter. And he began to feel pain, and he tried to shield that from his daughter because he didn't want to upset her, and he also wanted to be able to do what someone twice his age was doing just nearby. His daughter recognized that he was in pain and discomfort, and she said, "Dad, it's okay." And that was a really heartbreaking moment for him because he couldn't be the father that he wanted to be, and he felt like he let his daughter down. And I think the jury really connected with that, and fortunately for us, they gave an award that reflected, what was going to be his future, which was one where he was dealing with a really significant permanent spinal injury.
Well, that's fantastic, Bryan. It's so great that you were able to bring justice to this family who, clearly without your intervention and your help would not have the justice that they were able to achieve. So that's an incredible story. Thank you, Bryan. Is there anything about the firm that you're with, Stark & Stark, about their approach to handling cases that you can share with our viewers and listeners?
Sure. When you're an attorney who's taking on the representation of a family or someone who's been catastrophically injured, the most important thing is to tell their story. These are called personal injury cases for a reason. It's personal to each victim, and in order to tell their story properly, you have to get to know them. You have to spend time with them, and when you're talking to a jury at the end of a case, when you're talking to a judge, a mediator, a defense lawyer, an adjuster, you've got to speak from your heart. And the only way that you can do that is if you spend the time to get to know your client and you get to know how they've been affected by whatever terrible incident occurred.
Okay. Thank you, Bryan. Look, we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today on Personal Injury Perspective. I hope that our viewers learned something and enjoyed this interview with Bryan Roberts. Bryan, if a viewer wants to get in touch with you, what do they need to do?
Well, the best way, Rob, would be to go to the Stark & Stark website, www.stark-stark.com. That's going to have my biography, which goes into greater detail about the type of work that I've done over the years. And it'll have my contact information, my phone numbers, my email address, and I'd invite anyone to contact me through any of those methods.
Bryan, thank you for joining us today and spending time on Personal Injury Perspective. We really appreciate your insights. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are involved in a serious collision, which we hope you are not, involving a tractor trailer or other commercial vehicle, don't hesitate to contact Bryan Roberts. As he said, you can find him on the Stark & Stark website. And I can tell you for a fact that Bryan is an extremely compassionate person. And if you retain him, he will be your champion and he will get you justice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Rob.